Section 4 of Thoughts on Art and Life. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tom Davis Beale. Thoughts on Art and Life by Leonardo da Vinci. Translated by Maurice Baring and edited by Lewis Einstein. Thoughts on Life, Part 4. Memory. Every loss which we incur leaves behind it vexation in the memory, save the greatest loss of all, that is, death, which annihilates the memory, together with life. Spirit. Our body is subject to heaven, and heaven is subject to the spirit. Sense and reason. The senses are earthly, reason lies outside them when in contemplation. Where most feeling exists, there amongst martyrs is the greatest martyr. That which can be lost cannot be deemed riches. Virtue is our true wealth and the true reward of its possessor. It cannot be lost, it never deserts us until life leaves us. Hold property and external riches with fear. They often leave their possessor scorned and mocked at for having lost them. Flight of time. Men wrongly lament the flight of time, blaming it for being too swift. They do not perceive that its passage is sufficiently long, but a good memory, which nature has given to us, causes things long past to seem present. Illusions. Our intellect does not judge events which happened at various intervals of time in their true proportion, because many things which happened years ago appear recent and close to the present, and often recent things appear old and seem to belong to our past childhood. The eye does likewise with regard to distant objects in which the light of the sun appear to be close to the eye, and many objects which are close appear to be remote. Let us not lack ways and means of dividing and measuring these our wretched days, which we ought to take pleasure in spending and living not vainly and not without praise, nor without leaving any memory in the minds of men, so that this our miserable existence may not be spent in vain. Virtuous life. The age which flies glides by in stealth and deceives others. And nothing is more swift than the years, and he who sows virtue reaps glory. Sleep and death. O sleeper, what is sleep? Sleep is like unto death. Why dost thou not work in such wise that after death thou mayest have the semblance of perfect life, just as during life thou hast in thy sleep the semblance of the hapless dead? The water you touch in a river is the last of that which has gone, and the first of that which is coming. So it is with time present. A long life is a life well spent. Life. As a well-spent day affords happy sleep, so does a life profitably employed afford a happy death. Time the destroyer. O time, consumer of things, O envious age, thou dost destroy all things and consumest all things with the hard teeth of old age, little by little in a slow death. Helen, when she looked in her mirror and saw the withered wrinkles made in her face by old age, wept and wondered why she had twice been ravished. O time, devourer of things, O envious age, by which all is consumed. On fault finders. There exists among the foolish a certain sect of hypocrites who continually seek to deceive themselves and others, but others more than themselves, though in reality they deceive themselves more than others. And these are they who blame the painters who study on feast days the things which relate to the true knowledge of the forms of the works of nature, and sedulously strive to acquire knowledge of these things to the best of their ability. But such fault finders pass over in silence the fact that this is the true manner of knowing the artificer of such great and marvellous things, and that this is the true way in which to love so great an inventor. For great love proceeds from the perfect knowledge of the thing loved, and if you do not know it, you can love it but little or not at all. And if you love it for the gain which you anticipate obtaining from it, and not for its supreme virtue, you are like the dog which wags its tail and shows signs of joy, leaping towards him who can give him a bone. But if you knew the virtue of a man, you would love him more, if that virtue was in its place. Prayer. I obey thee, Lord, first for the love which in reason I ought to bear thee, secondly because thou hast the power to shorten or prolong the lives of men. Thou, O God, dost sell us all good things at the price of labour. And many make a trade, deceiving the foolish multitude, and if no one comes to unmask their deceits, they punish it. Pharisees, that is to say, holy friars. Nothing can be written by means of new researches. Patience. Patience serves against insults as clothes do against the cold, since if you multiply your clothes as the cold increases, the cold cannot hurt you. Similarly, let thy patience increase under great offences, and they will not be able to hurt your feelings. Advice to a speaker. Words which do not satisfy the ear of the listener will always weary or annoy him, and you will often see signs of this in such listeners in their frequent yawns. Therefore, you who speak before men whose good opinion you seek, when you observe such signs of vexation, shorten your speech or vary your argument, and if you do otherwise, then instead of the favour you seek, you will incur hate and hostility. And if you would see what gives pleasure to a man, speak to him on various themes, and when you see him intent, without yawning, or contracting his brow, or performing other actions, then be certain that the matter of which you are speaking is such as affords him pleasure. Advice. Here is a thing which the more it is needed, the more it is rejected, and this is advice which is unwillingly heeded by those who most need it, that is to say, by the ignorant. Here is a thing which, the more you fear and avoid it, the nearer you approach to it, and this is misery. The more you flee from it, the more miserable and restless you will become. When the work comes up to the standard of the judgment, this is a bad sign for the judgment, and when the work excels the standard of the judgment, this is the worst sign, as occurs when a man marvels at having worked so well, and when the standard of the judgment exceeds that fulfilled by the work. This is a sign of perfection. And if the man is young and be thus disposed, he will without doubt grow into an excellent workman. He will only accomplish few works, but they will be of a quality which will compel men to contemplate their perfection with admiration. Proverbs. Nothing should be so greatly feared as empty fame. This empty fame issues from vices. A broken vase of clay can be remodeled, but this is no longer possible when it has been baked. A vow is born when hope dies. The beautiful is not always the good, and the fine talkers labor under this error without any reason. He who wishes to grow rich in a day will be hanged in a year. The memory of benefits is a frail defense against ingratitude. Reprove your friend in secret, and praise him in public. He who fears dangers will not perish by them. The evil which does me no harm is like the good which in no wise avails me. He who offends others is not himself secure. Be not false about the past. Folly is the shield of lies, just as unreadiness is the defense of poverty. Where there is liberty, there is no rule. Here is a thing which the more it is heeded, the more it is spurned: advice. It is ill to praise, and worse to blame, the thing which you do not understand. On Mount Etna the words freeze in your mouth, and you make ice of them. Threats are the only weapons of the threatened man. Ask advice of him who governs himself well. Justice needs power, intelligence, and will, and is like the queen bee. Not to punish evil is equivalent to authorizing it. He who takes the snake by the tail will be bitten by it. The pit will fall upon him who digs it. He who does not restrain voluptuousness is in the category of the beasts. You can have no dominion greater or less than that over yourself. He who thinks little errs much. It is easier to contend at the first than at the last. No counsel is more sincere than that given on ships which are in danger. Let him who acts on the advice of the young expect loss. You grow in reputation like bread in the hands of a child. Cannot beauty and utility be combined, as appears in citadels and men? He who is without fear often incurs great losses, and is often full of regret. If you governed your body according to virtue, you would not live in this world. Where good fortune enters, envy lays siege to her and attacks her, and when she departs, sorrow and regret remain behind. When beauty exists side by side with ugliness, the one seems more powerful, owing to the presence of the other. He who walks straight rarely falls. O miserable race of man, of how many things you make yourself the slave for the sake of money! The worst evil which can befall the artist is that his work should appear good in his own eyes. To speak well of a bad man is the same of speaking ill of a good man. Truth ordains that lying tongues shall be punished by the lie. He who does not value life does not deserve it. The beautiful works of mortals pass and do not endure. Labor flies with fame almost hidden in its arm. The gold in ingots is refined in the fire. The shuttle says, "I will continue to move until the cloth is woven." Everything that is crooked is straightened. A great ruin proceeds from a slight cause. Fine gold is recognized when it is tested. The image will correspond to the die. The wall will fall on him who scrapes it. Ivy lives long. To the traitor, death is life, because if he makes use of others, he is no longer believed. When fortune comes, seize her in front firmly, because behind she is bald. Constancy means not he who begins, but he who perseveres. I do not yield to obstacles. Every obstacle is overcome by resolve. He who is chained to a star does not change. Truth. Fire destroys falsehood, that is to say, sophistry, and rehabilitates truth, scattering the darkness. Fire must be represented as the consumer of all sophistry and the revealer of truth, because it is light that scatters darkness which conceals all essences. Fire destroys all sophistry, that is to say, deceit, and preserves truth alone, which is gold. Truth cannot be concealed in the end. Dissimulation is of no avail. Dissimulation is frustrated before so great a judge. Falsehood puts on a mask. There is nothing hidden under the sun. Fire must represent truth because it destroys all sophistry and lies, and the mask is for sophistry and lies, which conceal truth. Rather privation of limbs than weariness of doing good. The power of using my limbs shall fail me before the power of being useful. Rather death than weariness. I cannot be satiated with serving. I do not weary of giving help. No amount of work is sufficient to weary me. This is a carnival motto, sine lassitudine. Hands in which ducats and precious stones abound like snow never grow weary of serving, but such a service is for its utility only, and not for our profit. Nature has formed me thus. Ingratitude. This shall be placed in the hand of ingratitude. The wood nourishes the fire that consumes it. When the sun, the scatterer of darkness, shines, you put out the light, which, for you in particular, and for your need and convenience, expelled the darkness. Physiological inferiority of man. I have found that in the composition of the human body as compared with the bodies of animals, the senses are less subtle and coarser. It is thus composed of less ingenious machinery and of cells less capable of receiving the power of senses. I have seen that in the lion the sense of smell is connected with the substance of the brain and descends through the nostrils, which form an ample receptacle for it, and it enters into a great number of cartilaginous cells, which are provided with many passages in order to receive the brain. A large part of the head of the lion is given up to the sockets of the eyes, and the optic nerves are in immediate contact with the brain. The contrary occurs in man, because the sockets of the eyes occupy a small portion of the head, and the optic nerves are subtle and long and weak, and owing to the weakness of their action we see little by day and less at night, and the animals above mentioned see better at night than in the daytime, and the proof of this is that they seek their prey at night and sleep during the daytime, as do also the nocturnal birds. Man's ethical inferiority. Thou hast described him king of animals, but I would rather say king of beasts, thou being the greatest. For hast thou not slain them, in order that they may give thee their children to glut thy greed, with which thou hast striven to make a sepulchre for all animals? And I would say still more, if I might speak the whole truth. But let us confine ourselves to human matters, relating one supreme infamy, which is not to be found among the animals of the earth, because among these you will not find animals who eat their young, except when they are utterly foolish, and there are few indeed of such among them, and this occurs only among the beasts of prey, such as the lions and leopards, panthers, lynxes, cats, and the like, which sometimes feed on their young. But thou, besides thy children, dost devour thy father, thy mother, thy brother, and thy friends, and not satisfied with this, thou goest forth to hunt on the islands of others, seizing other men, and of these half naked thou fattenest and chasest them down thy own throat. Now does not nature produce enough vegetables for thee to satisfy thyself? And if thou art not content with vegetables, canst thou not by a mixture of them make infinite compounds, as Platina wrote, and other writers on food? End of section 4.